Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beyond the Panel podcast. My name is Colin.
I'm Jared.
And before we get into it today, I just want to thank everybody who listens to the podcast, whether that's on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platforms. And as always, if you can leave a review, that's really great. It helps push the podcast out to more people. And we have a lot of fun doing it. And the more people that get to share in that fun, the better. So without further ado, today's episode we're talking about, and this is primarily a Marvel thing. It's not really a DC thing. They don't do it very much. But how Marvel keeps letting, or forcing, I guess, the movies to influence the comics. You know? And why that's not very good, why they might be doing it, why they might seem to think it's a good idea, and what might actually be a better idea to do it. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So first and foremost, Marvel is really, really adamant about letting the state of their movies influence the state of their comics. And I think one of the biggest and most egregious versions of that was when they didn't have the movie rights to Fantastic Four, they shelved the Fantastic Four completely, and
they pushed Inhumans real hard.
And really tried. They shelved Fantastic Four, put X-Men way off to the side, and they were like, "Hey, have you seen the Inhumans? They're also living in a world that fears and hates them."
It was this really weird, I think, mentality that Marvel editorial had of, we don't own the movie rights to these characters, so we're not going to give them time on the pages, even though there's a lot of fan of these characters. Because I guess for some reason they think that, Rising Tide lifts all ships. I don't know why not giving any page time or doing these comics all of a sudden will be help make you lose money.
I think
what? I don't get the mentality there.
It seems like the editorial's mentality, and this is basically what's going to influence everything we talk about, is that there's a lot of people going into comic book stores every week. A lot of people who have never picked up a comic book, who've never seen a movie before, and they're just wandering into a comic store. Now, first and foremost, that's not happening.
That's not at all happening.
But they're like, oh no, some impressionable young child is going to wander into a comic store, see a Fantastic Four book, read it, love it, and he'll go see the Fantastic Four film in theaters and not our film. That's not what's happening. They are way more likely to see the movie than they are to see your comic first. They will see the movie and then come buy the comic. If it was good. Yeah. Fantastic wasn't good, so that actually would have hurt comic sales, but...
Yeah, I don't get why they don't think the opposite might happen if a kid... Then again, it's probably still not going to happen anyways, but the idea that, hey, these people are making these... Like Fox is putting on X-Men movies. We should probably make X-Men comics so that if that kid sees that movie, maybe they want to read the comics and we can have it there for them.
I do have...
That's not really still happening.
I do have proof this happens because my wife saw Birds of Prey and started reading Harley Quinn comics. Because she really liked it. She really liked Harley. Yeah. She thought she was a great character. You know, it does happen. People will see these movies because they're advertised and they look good, or they go with their friends and they will be like, hey, I'm interested in this. I want to know more, you know, and they'll buy the comics, whether that's print or digitally.
So that was, I think, the most extreme version of what Marvel was doing.
Removing the Fantastic Four and strongly cutting back on the X-Men. And I
think the next stage of this is now...
Well, it's even felt in the video games, because I want to say Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, no Fantastic Four, no mutants at all. Mm-hmm. It was... And it's very weird, you know, when you play it and it's like you're playing a Marvel game and there's no Wolverine. None. No Wolverine. Yeah. Really? You couldn't even at least throw Wolverine in there? Nope, because we don't own his film rights. And it's like,
they didn't even have Deadpool. They said Gwenpool for whatever reason.
Let's not talk about Gwenpool.
Yeah.
The less we talk about her, the better. So those are, like you said, those are the most egregious and sweeping changes they've made. But over the past 15 years,
the most common version of this is that they'll adapt the comics, usually in at least visuals, to look like the movies.
Visually. They will also just change personalities outright sometimes. So visually, Tony Stark used to look like Howard Hughes and would regularly be drawn kind of like your handsome rich boy A-list of the decade or whatever. Iron Man came out and immediately he looked like Robert Downey Jr. He was a lot slimmer. Like he used to be a little bit huskier and have like more of a mullet. Nope, now his hair's neat and trim and spiky, and he's got his little goatee. He would have like a stash before, like a big thick stash.
Yeah.
And he looks good with the stash. Stash Tony is peak. And Tony, you know, again before RDJ was that he wasn't snarky. Like he was to an extent, but he was mostly like a pretty serious guy.
He was, I think, still kind of snarky. I remember in Civil War when he got like taken over, when he took over Shield and stuff. He was kind of full of himself and a bit cocky about it.
When did Civil War come out?
It was 2005. So it was before Iron Man.
So like he was always full of himself, but like they really, really ramped it up.
I think for the listeners, I'll recap one of the biggest ones, which is Nick Fury.
Oh my!
I'll take this one.
I'm just trying to go cry in a corner while you do this one. This one's bad.
For those of you at home, Nick Fury in the main Marvel comics for the longest time, at least from until about the late 2000s, I think I want to say the mid 2000s, like the 2010s or so.
Until Marvel Now, so after AVX, whatever that was.
So about mid 2010s to onward. But Nick Fury he was a white dude with an eye patch.
He looked like David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think, did he even play him in a movie?
Yeah, that's why I used the comparison.
Yeah, but from like the 40s when he's introduced, or even the 50s to the mid 2010s, he was a white dude. But then what happened is that in the 2000s, there was the Ultimate Comics, which is an alternate universe line of comics. And in that, the artist, for whatever reason, made Nick Fury look like Samuel L. Jackson.
Which is cool.
Like, not even like just kind of. It's like it was Samuel L. Jackson. But he was, and it's an alternate universe, so it's fine. They can do what I think Sam Jackson, signed off it. I don't know if they got his approval or not.
I think
either way, that's what he looked like. And then Marvel, as kind of a fun and tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, Marvel hires Samuel L. Jackson to play Nick Fury in the comics. He blows up. Everyone loves him
in the comics.
Sorry. Everyone loves him in the role. He's great. He's Samuel L. Jackson for crying out loud.
He's great. Yeah.
And then Marvel, to make the push towards coinciding to looking like their movies, takes away through a whole weird event. We're not going to talk about called Fear itself. The old Nick Fury goes away, and then it's revealed, Nick Fury had a secret son who is African American and also lost his eye in a war, and now also wears an eye patch.
And his name is Nick Fury Jr.
Nick Fury Jr. So it still works. It's like,
and he's going to become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. now.
Yeah, and he also gets to become director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And now we have an African American Nick Fury that it's not straight up Samuel Jackson, but kind of looks like him.
When they could have just brought in Ultimate Nick, really.
They could have, yeah.
If they wanted to do. Oh, and don't forget this Nick Fury also has a friend. His name is Phil Coulson.
Oh, yeah, Phil Coulson was not in the comics at all.
No.
They just made him into a character.
Yeah, because Clark Gregg was just cast as like, yeah, whatever. You're just like a nondescript dude. You'll play a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And he was really well liked. So they quickly crammed him in there too. It's very weird.
Another example I can give is the Guardians.
I want to do Star-Lord.
Okay, yeah.
Before the Guardians movie came out, Star-Lord was essentially a space cop. He was basically Marvel's version of Green Lantern. Star-Lord was not his
wars and stuff. Yeah, he was.
Star-Lord was not his nickname. He was a Star-Lord. Like that was like his rank kind of thing.
His moniker.
Yeah. He had like the Guardians were like military style uniforms, similar to what they wear in the third Guardians movie. He was serious. He was essentially like space Captain America. And then the movie came out, and he was goofy, and he loved 80s music, and he wore a red leather jacket, and he was scruffy and had blonde hair, and suddenly in the comics that was what he looked like too. Why?
If you want to see an interesting change, look up, for those listening, Google Drax and Gamora in the Infinity War comic. They look very different than they do in the movies.
Oh yeah, Gamora used to have like big yellow diamonds around her eyes.
Gamora's like a snake lady.
Oh, seriously?
And kind of not like snake features, but she had like a green kind of cloak thing. Kind of looked like kind of snakish.
Yeah, she had like yellow diamonds around her eyes, and
yeah. And she was hanging out with Adam Warlock at Patrol, and then Drax had like a purple cloak, he had like a purple cape and stuff. And
no tattoos, just was smooth.
Well, to be fair, they did change his design in like Annihilation back in I think the mid 2000s, and that was closer to what the movies did.
Okay.
But then they like kind of that was like when he had the green and kind of the red tattoos. But then they did kind of shift it more to looking like Dave Bautista's character when the movie came out. So that one isn't as bad.
But like,
and Gamora's isn't terrible either. But they straight up like changed.
The visual design's not bad. It was okay. But like for Star-Lord, it was just this super personality twist. He was not the same character.
Yeah, Star-Lord's like mask from the movies was never in the comics until they changed things. That was like that was
a helmet
design. Yeah, he had a helmet, his own helmet. And
like basically, if you take the mask he had in the movies and add like a musketeer's helmet to the top of it, that's sort of what his helmet looked like. That was gone as soon as the movie came out too.
This is kind of I'll try to skirt around, but Colin, you'll know what I'm talking about. The callback from the second one that was with working with the Ravagers in 3, he came in with a helmet. I don't know if I want to say a spoiler or not. Stallone comes back.
Oh yeah.
From 2 to 3.
No, people knew that. Yeah,
he shows up again. Stallone in Guardians 3. In his first scene, he's wearing a helmet, and that is one of the old Star Wars helmets.
Yeah, but yeah, and so it would, and it's like I don't know. Should they have just made another character to just be the new Star-Lord, or is it better that they just suddenly altered his personality?
One thing I do appreciate is they didn't change Star-Lord's parentage as being Ego.
Jason Spartax is way better.
Yeah.
It's infinitely better.
But that's another big one. I think...
What are some of the other really big ones?
The X-Men comics really, did they change the look of them too much? Yes. I think the team... Yeah.
When the original X-Men movies came out, and this is quite a while ago, Grant Morrison was writing X-Men at the time. And they rebooted the X-Men, and everybody was in black leather with yellow X's, and that was it. And they didn't get costumes back until like 2006.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, like at the very least, the MCU lets people wear costumes. Black leather was a bad time. Oh, another older one. So Sam Raimi thought that it was dumb that a kid made web shooters, so he gave Peter organic webbing, which I guess is fine. And then they did this really ham-fisted change in the comics to give Peter organic webbing, where he like got sort of a little bit mutated. And then they undid it because everybody was like, "No, that sucks. Web shooters are way cooler."
Yeah.
But again, it's just one of those things where it's like this weird need to, well, this thing happened in the movies. People are going to be confused if they're not the same. I think people are smarter than that.
There were even some where they did full on, like, one way or the other. They did, like, events in the comics to tie in with things.
Next, yeah.
Yeah. Like, Civil War, the movie comes out. Hey, let's do a new, like, Civil War. The original Civil War comic came out in 2005, a number of years before the MCU started. Civil War, the movie finally comes out. Hey, let's do a new Civil War.
They could have just reprinted the original.
Yeah, they really could have.
Oversized reprint. But no, well, let's do a new one. But won't that cause some character assassination? I don't care.
It's like, hey, our second Avengers movie has Ultron in it. What should we name it? Let's name it after that event that happened a little while ago that has nothing to do with the plot we're doing.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron. It's like they just named it.
Or like how right now they're doing the multiverse saga involving Kang. Kang has not been a very major player in the comics in a while. That's fine, whatever. But now suddenly there's this big Kang event happening. Because we gotta, and I get it, it's a marketing thing. Like, if you're gonna go to the comics, like, but they're trying to make money. No, I totally get it. But when it feels so unnatural, it's weird.
The Eternals got a resurgence when the movie came out, too.
Yeah.
They were barely in the comics at all.
In fairness, the Eternals are really good characters, and they're actually being written pretty interestingly right now, because that's what you get when you let Kieron Gillen write things. You get good results.
Yeah.
Let him write more things. But...
yeah, Vader comic from like 2015. It's really good.
Which one?
It's like Darth Vader comic from like 2015. Oh, yeah. It's really good.
But Gillen is fantastic. Gillen can. If I was ever like working at editorial and was like, I have an event, I'd be like, I would want Kieron Gillen to do it because he's shown he can definitely manage a lot of characters. Very, very good. Underrated in my opinion. I'm trying to think of other changes that they've made just to like hold hands with the movies. I'm coming up short on some of them. After Sam became Captain America, they turned him back into Captain America in the comics. So like he had become Captain America, and then Steve became Cap again, and Sam went back to being Falcon. Which I get it, that's a little weird. Like you can have two Captain Americas, there's no problem with that. But he was Falcon again, and it was fine. But now he's become Captain America again in the movies or in the MCU. And like, quick, we gotta do it again in the comics. Like, okay, now there's just two Captain Americas. Why? Like, again, you could have just left him there and I wouldn't have had a problem with it. My problem with it is that you're going back on it just to synergize with the movie. Because they have this idea, again, that people are going to be confused for some reason.
Here's a more minor one, but the Infinity Gems becoming the Infinity Stones.
And changing colors?
Yeah, the original colors in the comic were not what they are in the movies.
For example, Power Stone in the movie, purple. Power Gem in the comics was red.
Yeah, they just completely changed it to fit with the movies, which in some like I don't mind because like that's a minor thing,
but it's just like forced.
Yeah,
you know, I think
what harm was it being Gems doing? Like, no one's gonna be like, "Wait, this isn't the same."
Well, I'm confused. I don't want to buy this anymore. Like,
the movie said stone. This is gem. I don't know what's going on.
I'm confused.
Like, I don't know why they think
we'll no longer patronize this establishment. Like, that's not what's going to happen, and it seems like Marvel thinks that's what's going to happen.
I think we need to get into just like, unless you have any other examples, I think we need to get in just why, at least our ideas or reason or theories on why.
And then there's also characters that have not mattered to anyone in years suddenly getting solo titles just because they're in an upcoming thing. Like,
well, that's like the Guardians. The Guardians were like a D-list space team for the longest time.
With
and then around like 2000, I think Gary Duggan brought him back to be pretty good again.
Yeah.
Or I think maybe, yeah. And they came back, they had a resurgence, and now they've had like a current comic for a while now.
Yeah, or with all due respect, nobody cared about Shang-Chi before the movie came out.
No, then they gave him a title.
Yep.
When that got big.
And again, and so this is kind of going to tie into why. But they clearly expect there to be a tie between the movie-going audience and the comic buying audience. But I think that they have it. I think they're confused. Like, they think that the audience is almost stupid in a way where, okay, they're going to go see this movie and then they're going to rush to the store.
Yeah, they have this weird mentality that anyone to go see, like, they think that anyone who's going to go see a Marvel movie is going to like be so interested in it, they're going to rush to their local comic store and try and look at the shelves and then see what there is.
Which, I mean, as comic fans, that's what we want. Like, we want the industry to thrive. But that's not what happens. Realistically, that doesn't happen 100. That's probably like 2% of people. You know?
Like, and they think because of that, they think, oh, if they don't recognize what they saw in the movie on the shelf, then they're not going to want to buy anything.
Yes.
Even though the name alone should be enough, and they can ask whoever's working at the comic store, like, what's a good place to start? Because there's plenty of old trades of like older stories that Marvel's done that could work as a jumping in point.
People at your LCS know these things.
The movies no matter what.
You know, the people they know what to help you with. That's why they work there, because they have this knowledge.
They can like tell you like, here's this new number, like this number one starting. It's not like a lot of continuity behind it. This was a good point, like the starting off point, and like there's some elements you might recognize from the movies, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like the people who are already like Marvel adapting elements in the comics is fun, but it's weird when it's a fine line between doing it like wholeheartedly adapting it and then doing it in name only, like Age of Ultron, because people who are in the comic shops are most likely going to see the movie already anyways.
No,
so you don't really need to sell to them.
You're not selling to the comic fans anymore.
No, but it's like, I don't know what they think that getting people are going to like rush to, like, there's ways to do this that could maybe work. And I think if we want to go into that,
I think a big one is if you are paying tribute to an old thing, like, okay, obviously, like, nothing is original under the sun is kind of like a common thing, but like Love and Thunder, you're adapting Gore, reprint that stuff.
Oh yeah,
immediately, but they don't. They won't. They're going to be like, okay, well, Gore's back in the comics somehow, or Jane's Thor in the movie, so quick, let's write a 10-issue mini where she becomes Thor again, which they did.
Yeah.
And it's like, just reprint
the
trades of
Mighty Thor,
the Mighty Thor, right? Rather than derailing the stuff you're already doing just to make things. Because Jane's not Thor anymore in the comic. She's Valkyrie now, and it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, instead of like pulling the hard brakes on the train in the middle of it going down the tracks of Marvel Comics, just pull out the old stuff, reprint, and if for the people for that 2% that do go to the comic store, you'll make some money from it, and that's fine. And also people that want these old trades that can't get them anymore, like
it's hard to find Civil War, right?
Yeah.
If it pops up at a good rate, like $20 in a fresh trade, I'm gonna grab that. I love collecting.
Yeah, it's hard to find one.
I love collecting older trades.
I had trouble finding the Jason Aaron Thor, the Gore stuff. Like I found one at the comic shop and I had to buy volume 2 from Amazon.
We don't want to do
volume
that.
1 was in there. No, we don't want to if we can avoid it.
We try to support our LCS as much as we can.
Like my favorite Moon Knight comic, I don't think you can get it anymore.
Yeah, and it's like, rather than being like, oh, there's a Moon Knight series coming up, let's relaunch Moon Knight with a brand new #1 and make everything as close as we can to the movies, just reprint some stuff. Rather than being like, oh, Civil War's coming out, let's stop what everyone's doing, make Civil War 2, throw everything into disarray, just reprint Civil War. No one wanted Civil War 2. It was bad.
It was really bad.
It's really bad. Might actually be one of my least favorite comic events ever. It had like
character assassinated Carol.
Oh, it did so much damage to Carol for years. It has one good moment. And that's it. And we can talk about that when we talk about some of like the worst comic stories. But it's like, okay, What If's coming out, right? Like, reprint Marvel Zombies. I hate Marvel Zombies, but reprint it to capitalize off the hype. Put out a trade of classic What If stories.
Yeah.
You know? People will scoop that up, whether it's people who are just getting into it or people who are already in it, they'll scoop that up rather than being like, well, now we're going to relaunch What If, or we're going to make a Captain Carter comic or whatever. I don't think they did that. But, like, those are things you could see them doing rather than just being like, you have this backlog. You know? And that's just, it comes into a bigger problem where it seems like Marvel has this insistence of keeping their old stuff locked away. Like, they don't want you to see it.
Yeah. I think that's kind of just a part of the problem of, and this is a different episode we have on our list to do at some point, but Marvel, I think just partly because of the nature of how they put out stories and what they do, is that compared to DC, they don't have as many just kind of like single like books you can just pick up and read as its own thing in like a graphic novel format.
Marvel doesn't have a lot of evergreen stuff.
No, most of Marvel's trades are just, here's volume 1 of a run, here's volume 2, here's volume 3, here's volume 4, and so on. And like occasionally you get these one-shot things, or like an event comic will have its own, like it'll just be the 6 issues of Secret Empire or whatever, or like World War Hulk. Like you can get those, you could get those back in the day, and that's fine. But usually it's just, here's a run of the comic, and here's however many volumes of that, and that's your trades. It's like, here's issue 1 to 6, here's 7 to 12, and so on and so forth.
Or and just like, or this need to like schedule events around movies, right? Like Death of Doctor Strange happening right as Multiverse of Madness was happening. It's like, you didn't need to do a whole Doctor Strange death event. You could have just promote his book a little more.
They want this like company synergy, but it doesn't work because the movies are making their own history and their own timeline of things and their own continuity, and the comics are deep in their own continuity as well. So when you just when you just pull on the e-brake to accommodate for, like, it's like each company, like Marvel, like the studio, the comic books and the movies are building their own Lego set, and then all of a sudden it's like they're doing their thing, they're building their own little Lego tower, they're building their little community, they're building their little village, and then like, this person, like the suit movie's got this thing going on. All right, here's a bunch of Lego pieces from this other set. Stick it in here somewhere.
Yep. Well,
and then it doesn't fit. It doesn't look right, and it just makes everyone upset because it doesn't feel natural.
And this happens with their games too. I mean, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 just being about the Black Order. and Thanos and the Infinity Stones. And now, don't get me wrong, it's still a really good game with a really good original plot. But
it had X-Men at least, and Fantastic Four.
Putting the Guardians front and center, making it about Thanos. A lot of people's default designs looking really close to their movie versions. It's like, okay, you're clearly trying to capitalize off the MCU. And the thing is, it's like they think that if something doesn't look just like the MCU, people aren't going to be interested. And it's like, no, yeah, that is your big money spinner right now, but your gaming audience doesn't care. They're going to be excited for a Marvel game. You know? Like the Spider-Man games, they're great. They don't need to be like, oh, but look, and now he's wearing the same costume he is in Homecoming or Far From Home. You like that, right? Like, no, people are excited for it because it's Spider-Man, because there's a history there. People are excited for Ultimate Alliance because it's Diablo with superheroes. You don't need to piggyback the MCU to try and sell it to them. But you
can throw in homages to it because, like, the Guardians game had like the Guardians 1 costumes. Sexual Wolf, the Fault of the Avengers game, it had a bunch of MCU outfits that were fun to use. And like Spider-Man has, like the Spider-Man game has a bunch of the movie outfits as well.
Well, even the Guardians game, as comic influenced as it is, it's still heavily steeped in the MCU with their characterizations, with Quill's music love, his red leather jacket, like all of that. It's like, again, yeah, okay, these are the definitive incarnations of the characters now, but it's only because you felt so strongly that you had to, go and be like, well, no, this needs to be like the movie because that's what people know now. It's you're making adaptations, but they're not going to be adaptations anymore if you keep changing things up to fit.
No, and like the consumer, like anyone who's interested, who wants to get into comics, can adapt. Like you and I both got into comics at different times. Neither one of us, because we saw a movie and we're like, hey, we want to go check it out. Like, I just want, for me personally, I was like, I just want to go, like, I want to like see what there are for comics. So I went to the comic shop, and at the time I think Siege was happening, and I just picked up a random Spider-Man comics.
Okay,
and I was like, this is fun.
So for me, contextually, my first introduction to comic books and superheroes was the 90s Spider-Man show. They would release like chunks of episodes on VHS.
By the way, I knew comics way before that, but just like the first time I went to a comic shop was for Siege.
I'm sorry, I hadn't been. I'm talking about like the first time I got comics, ever. Okay. So my dad and I would watch this, and then I really liked it, and I got into superheroes. And my dad had a few old Spider-Man comics, and I'd read them. And I wasn't like, wait, why isn't this exactly like the show that I just watched? Huh? He's married? Yeah. He's not married in the show. What? I'm confused. Like, I wasn't like that, right? And then, years later, I read Secret Wars, and I wasn't like, wait, why isn't Spider-Man in charge of the heroes like he is in the show? Because the show's different. The show's doing a little play on the thing. And they didn't feel like, oh, well, Spider-Man's doing Secret Wars. Let's redo Secret Wars, And it's just like
Marvel's continuity is thick, and it's hard to get through, and it's hard to kind of make that first leap into the pool.
Oh, definitely.
Because there is a lot of history to it, but it is possible to get in there and enjoy things and kind of pick up along the way. And it's, if you just find old like you can find evergreen trades. You can find, like, Marvel has a bunch of those, what are they called? I have one for Venom, where it's just like they reprint a bunch of old it's just reprints of old runs. Like you can get like old stories from like Thor. Like you've seen the LCS. There's that one shelf. It's like, here's a crap ton of Fantastic Four comics. Here's X-Men ones. And they all have different, like, their event titles and all in there. And there's a collection of comics.
Well, and it's
easy to pick up and get into and read and enjoy.
And it's like, there's no bad starting point really in comics, Like,
Stan Lee had that old mantra of everyone's comic is someone's first.
Exactly, and Marvel seems to have this mantra now. We need to keep relaunching and have new number one so people will start. And it's like, no. For decades, you ran like hundreds of issues and everyone was okay.
Everyone got it.
You get books now where it's like, okay, Avengers had like 3 volumes for 40 years, and now they're up to volume 9. It's like in the past 15 years, you've went through 6 volumes of a book because you're like, no, we have to keep relaunching.
It's like, I want to get like Amazing Spider-Man. It's like, I want to get Hulk Volume 1. It's like, well, do you mean like Donny Cates's book? Do you mean like
Donny Cates is like Hulk volume like 8 now? Or whatever.
But it's like, if you want to start at the beginning, it's like, do you want to get like, you mean like the Donny Cates run? Do you mean back here?
Yeah.
Like, it's because they keep restarting. Like, they seem to always want to restart the line.
Yeah.
Whenever a new team comes on.
And it's like, no, just hand the new creative team the reins and let them keep going. You don't need to cancel the book now. And it's like, yeah, like Donny Cates stepped down from Hulk and now they're like just ending it. It's like, why? You can just let someone else write it. Oh, but this is what Cates
I think someone is taking it over now.
Are they? Is someone taking over Thor too?
I don't know about Thor, but I think Philip Kennedy Johnson, I think, is taking over.
Yeah, but it's like
Hulk.
It's like, okay, let's say with Immortal Hulk, Al Ewing felt like he was done. Okay, well, you don't need to end it and restart. Just have the next issue and take the Immortal title off.
Yeah.
And it's how comic books went for years. And
or instead of calling Immortal Hulk, just have Al Ewing's been volume whatever and it's a new team.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Well, Immortal Hulk is not a great example because it's a pretty self-contained story. But
it is, but like it also could have been like, this is like a 50-issue part of Hulk, but it's just like, it's this Hulk volume and it's issue 127 to 177.
Yeah, like Peter David's take on Hulk wasn't like, it was just part of the Hulk comic.
Yeah, they didn't be like, okay, stop everything, take a few months off, and then let Peter David start up again. Like, no, people just kept going. When he was done, he was done.
Yeah, like Spider-Man, it's like you went from Lee, and then like you got the writers to 70s, like you had Romita Sr. and all that stuff, and then you got like JMS, and then like I moved on to Dan Slott, and that was just all just Spider-Man. Like they caved at number one for the most part. It's like here's this run, but it's like these many issues, and then like Dan Slott went up to like Spider-Man 800.
Yeah,
and then like 801, and then moved on to Nick Spencer, and then from there on.
And like, yeah, okay,
now
like I think
now it's like Spider-Man 25 or whatever.
Yeah, I think, but they also try and have their cake and eat it too by being like, look, legacy numbers. It's a big number. It's like, yeah, well, it could have been if you hadn't ended it. Like the only reason a book should roll over into a new volume is if you cancel it.
Yeah,
and so basically you keep canceling these titles before they really get a head of steam going. Like, you look through Avengers history, and I'll use Avengers as an example, and for years, they just would change creative teams, change the teams up, whatever. But now, oh, well, Jason Aaron finishes Avengers thing, so now it's done, and now someone new is going to start up, and it's a brand new volume with a new logo and everything. Didn't need to do that. That could have just been in the next issue. You would have issues of Avengers where the team was 2 people because half the team left in the last issue. And oh, well, let's refresh the roster. Let's get some new people on board. And they did. You don't need to keep ending the team only to have them come back. It loses all meaning after a while, but because they want to synergize and they want to make things more like the movies and whatever, it's not good. It's weird. And honestly, if anything, it makes it more dense for people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have this person in my Discord server who's reading Captain America, and she's starting from like the 40s stuff, because she was able to get like a digital copy of it, which is fun and whatever. But it's like, okay, yeah, she's not going to get into anything like relevant to Cap nowadays for 20 years of run.
It's a lot easier for an employee at a comic book store who's talking to someone new. It's like, I want to read Spider-Man. What should I read? Like, well, okay, here's Spider-Man 340 to 375, and like it was this team. It was part of the continuity. It's this story. You don't really need to know much about what happened before. It's his own thing. It's a fun adventure. Here you go. Well, instead of being like, well, like I want to get into Spider-Man. It's like, well, do you want like here's volume 1 from this team. Here's volume 1 from this team. Even though it's all in the same continuity.
It's like nobody wants to read the current Zeb Wells stuff because he's just doing. That's just too editorial influenced, honestly. But it's like
Nick's an issue of Spider-Man being their flagship.
That's a whole other episode. But like Nick Spencer was doing some really good work with Spider-Man, in my opinion. I really enjoyed what Spencer was putting out. And his run ended. Okay, but you don't need to then end it, do this weird Beyond thing. It's like, but Ben Reilly is Spider-Man now. How will people understand that? Just put it on the cover. They'll get it. They'll be okay. I think the wider problem is Marvel especially just underestimates their audience.
Mm-hmm.
They think that if things aren't constantly reissued and number one and like the movies, people are going to be confused and they'll lose money. And it's like,
If they're not
honestly,
constantly accommodating to this idea of someone fresh walking to a comic store every day, then they think that they're going to lose money.
And it's like, well, what did you guys do 50 years ago? You know, people walked into comic stores and they'd be like, I want to read Spider-Man. Okay, here's this week's issue of Spider-Man. Okay. Oh, I really liked that. Okay, well, do you want to read what came before, or do you just want to keep going? I'll just keep going. Or, oh, no, I want to read what came before. Okay, well, let's look at the back issues then. Right?
The worst part of it is that they have this, like, they're adapting these things into the they're throwing these things into the comic store to adapt to the movies, but they're providing no means of helping people find their local comic shops or telling them that, like, they're not even telling them that, hey, this is happening in comics right now.
Yeah.
Like, the general movie going audience, it's like, okay, it's like Civil War 2 is terrible, but imagine it was a good event.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't even telling, like, you see the Civil War movie comes out, they're not telling anyone Civil War 2 is happening right now. They're not telling general movie audiences, like, hey, this thing's going on in the comics. We think you might like it. Want to go take a look. There's no marketing. There's no branding. There's no communication with general audiences to get them to go to the comic shop in the first place. So the only people this shit hurts is the people that are reading these comics normally.
Exactly, because this fresh movie-going audience, if they don't know that comic book stores are a thing, because let's be real, not everyone does, or a lot of people think that they're just dead, right? You know, they're not going to be like, oh, wow, I really love that. Let me go to let me figure out where a comic book store is, right? So unless you know someone like us who's going to be like, oh, crap, you should go to the comic book store. Here's where it is. Here's a really good one. They don't know, you know? And this isn't just happening in the comics. Like this, Avengers vs. Mightiest Heroes was a fantastic animated show that adapted heavily from the comics.
Oh, yeah.
Heavily. It was, you know, comic rosters, comic personalities, comic storyline.
The main event of season 2 was a comic event.
It was amazing. But then Avengers the movie came out, and they're like, wait, we want to synergize with the movie. They canceled the show and replaced it with Avengers Assemble, which I've seen. It's not like the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not very good. And they're cramming in Thanos and the Red Skull and, oh, well, this season's going to be a Civil War season, and this one's going to be, Cap has a new costume because in the movies his new costume. And let's quickly introduce Scott Lang as Ant-Man because his movie just came out. And, oh, Carol Danvers is here, and Thor now has an eye patch and short hair to represent his look. And, oh, well, this final season's all about Black Panther because his movie just came out. You know, and it's like, what are you doing? You know, Black Panther, Thor, all of them were in the AEMH, and people are going to watch it. They're not going to turn it off because it's not just like what they just saw. And it seems like Marvel seems to think that if things aren't just like the MCU, people won't be into it. And it's like, the crossover isn't so huge. There's so many different fans. Sure, maybe one person cares. Maybe one person's going to be like, oh, this isn't like the movies, and not be into it. But for everyone else, I think people value diversity and choice, you know, rather than just one homogenized product.
The pool of people that will actually take the time to look into going to finding comics after seeing a movie is pretty small. But out of that, the people that are going to be like, out of that small pool, there's not going to be that many, like you're saying, or they're going to be upset that what they see doesn't look just like what they know already or recognize already from the comics, or they're not going to see like, or a title of a movie isn't somewhere on a book on the shelf. Like the fact that like an Ant-Man book isn't called Quantumania, they're not going to be freaking out about it.
Yeah. And like with Civil War 2, it's like that's even worse because it's like, oh, well, that's a title of the thing I just saw or the thing that I'm excited for that's coming out. And then it's nothing like it. At all.
No.
Right? Whereas you could have just, again, reprinted the original Civil War, which isn't that good anyway. Let's be real here. It's okay. But it's still pretty rough. Tony got done dirty. But they could pick that up, be like, oh man, and now I'm more excited for the movie because this is what I can kind of expect to happen, right? And then, you know, they read Civil War and then go see the movie because they got excited. And then when certain things happen, like Tony and Cap slamming together, they're like, hey, I just saw that in the comic. I'm excited. That's made me feel excited, you know? That's how you get people to have those fanboy moments.
Like, and the marketing to get people into the shops isn't too tough to do either. Like, I think even DC's done this a little bit with the Flash movie. They've been like, I think behind the trailers or after the trailers, they put up like here, here's like Flashpoint and stuff like that. Here's these books that we're kind of basing off of things.
Yeah.
Or like if you like with the Batman, they put out a collection. For the Batman, they put out a collection of like, here's the books that kind of influenced that movie, and had like the picture on the box was like kind of the poster from the movie.
Yeah, it was like Batman's, and
like,
that was
brilliant.
Like,
Ego and Year One and stuff, and that's great. Or even just in the theater, like, and it's like it would be a lot cooler, I think personally, like the theaters we go to, this little kiosk that have like pop figures and plushies and shit. We're never gonna buy that while we're in the middle of the line getting popcorn.
I mean, I have, but
you have, but not often. But like. And general audiences aren't going to care enough either. No. Like it's toys to get the kids to buy stuff. But like Marvel and DC could easily put out dollar comics on a rack in the movie theater, and that have like that are just evergreen stories, or like even get a team like to write. Like DC kind of did this with the Walmart books, but that's a whole other thing.
Like a free comic book day type thing.
But like DC did this with Walmart. They had like a collection of like old comics, and like they were putting up one like issue of a new comic, like a new story. That's how we got like Up in the Sky and Batman Universe. Yeah. But Walmart like buried those away in like a corner, like in part of like in one of the aisles, and it was the heart of like in the toy section. It was like buried under a thing, like you couldn't find it easily. So like do that, but just stick it in movie theaters, have it on a rack, and here's like just
people would buy
like,
that on the way out.
Even hire a team, like make a team to like just you don't need the best artist in the world, but get a decent artist, get a good writer that can just do fun, silly little stories.
Yep.
And just like, hey, here's like here's a story about Spider-Man, like, and you can do that to tie it into the movie. You can make it look like you can have like if like Spider-Man, like a new Spider-Man movie comes out and he's fighting, say he's fighting Kraven, even though we're not talking about a Kraven movie, but say he's fighting Kraven, just put out like while that movie on the day that movie's released, here's this like fun little comic about Spider-Man fighting Kraven.
And then at the end of that, be like, if you like this, check out your local comic book shop, and be like Kraven's Last Hunt. And like seminal stories with Spider-Man and Kraven that inspired what you just saw. Yeah, and like, or heck, even at the end of like a trailer, like at the end of at the end of a trailer for the new Marvel movie, put out a thing saying like here's make an app that's like put in your address. Here's comic stores around you. Yeah, that's like super easy. It's super easy. Like even just like QR codes, whatever, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, you're running in your credits, add a few extra lines, or you say story inspired by, and then list the comics. So people can be like, oh, dang it, okay, I'll check that out. There are ways to get your movie going audience into the comic book store, and there's ways to do it without, for lack of a better term, bastardizing what you're currently doing just to fit this mold. Like, Hank Pym was the first Ant-Man, and barely anybody is going to care about that because all we care about right now is Scott Lang. And I love Scott Lang. He is great. But, like, you've shoved Hank Pym so far into the background now that he doesn't even matter. It sucks. I love Hank Pym. I think he's a well-written character. I know I'm the only person to actually who's really angry about this, because I love Hank Pym, but still. That Ant-Man mini recently was a lot of fun. That was great. Like a celebration of all the Ant-Man characters. It was beautiful. I loved it. But yeah, there's so much you can do. And it's really not that hard for Marvel to do. Like we literally, we did not sit down and pre-plan any of this, and we just threw out a bunch of ideas that you could do to actually... Yeah, show some comics in the trailer. Put out an app people can find comic stores around them. Do what Batman did with a collection of dollar comics. Throw them out and put them on his rack in the movie theater. Like, or even don't even make them $1. Just do like really cheaply printed free ones. Yeah, you know, like the theater used to have like magazines. Like just stack there. It's like, okay, be like, hey, we made this cardboard thing. Please put this outside the theater. We're gonna give you 500 comics or 1,000. Just Put it right outside there, so on the way out, people can grab them if they're interested. People will do it. People like free things. Yeah. Someone will grab it on the way out. Like, I grab that movie magazine occasionally to read before I would do it all the time. Yeah, it was great. Or, on the way in. Oh, we got there early. Trailers haven't started yet. You read it on when you're there, and it gets you excited. And then you are more likely to go to a comic book store on your way out. Right? Be like, oh, man, that was really cool. I kind of want to read more about that. Like, I really liked that character. Yeah, it's weird to me. And
Like if Marvel doesn't want to spend the money, or Marvel DC don't want to spend the money printing comics to put specifically in theaters, that's fine. Like I get it doesn't make the money. They're not going to like it's costing them. They're not going to want to do that normally. But it's not at all hard to at the end of your trailers on YouTube or whatever else, or in a tweet from Marvel Studios, from Marvel Entertainment on or DC's Twitter account or whatever, just like, hey, like here's the movie, like the trailer is done. Here's the things we kind of base this off of. Here's some inspiration for this movie.
Are you excited for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Here's some stories featuring the High Evolutionary. Here's some stories featuring Rocket Raccoon.
Here's Rocket and Groot's like solo comic, whatever else,
Here's some stuff featuring Star-Lord, right? Like just okay, great.
Like
just generate the interest and do it through your Marvel Studios account.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that people are following. That's the one your movie fans are following. Right? Like, I get it. You're going to want to cram in movie references, but at least be artful in the way you do it. And I think that's the conclusion, right? Like, just be artful and don't treat the fans like they're dumb. Right?
And for those who might not know, like, and just give them a gentle guiding hand to show them to the right place. And here's the comics you can read and just if people have questions, they can ask the employees of their local comic shop. They can tell them kind of what would work and what doesn't. Like more often than not, they're friendly people. They like talking about comics. They'll tell you, they'll give recommendations. They'll tell you what works. They'll tell you what, in their opinion, doesn't. They'll point you at the shelf of what's new, what might be good to jump onto, or they'll show you one of the trades.
Yeah. And
it's that easy.
Yeah. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other ideas on what Marvel Studios, this is specifically directed at Marvel. DC is a lot better about it. But like what Marvel could do to create.
DC is not like less bad at pushing their comics to match their movies because they haven't as many movies. It's more just But
DC's they're a little more artful about it. Like at
least with Flashpoint, they went. At least with the Flash movie, they're like, hey, here's Flashpoint. Here's a thing.
If you guys have any other ideas, let us hear them. And we really hope you enjoyed it. So for Beyond the Panel, my name is Colin.
I'm Jared.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.